This happened 6 years ago. I was preparing to move into a house across the state and trying to get rid of anything that took up too much space. Craigslist was the only way I could think of to do this easily, as well as bring in a bit of extra cash to help me with the move. I posted about 10 separate listings of random things I was selling. Each item I was asking less than $20 for, just because I wanted them to go quickly. And for most of them, they did. I think only a couple were left by the end of the week, one of which was a workout bench with a set of weights. This was probably the last thing I wanted to haul into the moving truck and into the new place, so I really wanted it gone. I waited until just a few days before the moving date, before someone finally sent me an email. I opened it, and all they said was, "I can pick it up today." Nothing more. I sent a reply, asking what time they could come at. We ended up going back and forth over the course of an hour, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find the interaction odd. He would only write a vague sentence or two per message, making it take forever to plan out the exchange. In most other situations, I would never give away my address, especially in such a weird conversation, but I was moving away in just a few days, so I didn't feel it mattered too much. I sat on my phone in the kitchen for a while, just waiting for the guy to arrive. 30 minutes went by with no call or text, until I heard a car pull up outside, and then footsteps coming up to the front door. I waited for the doorbell or a knock, but nothing came, so I went up and opened the door. He looked startled, like he wasn't expecting it, but he also wasn't doing anything. From the small glimpse I got while opening the door, it looked like he was just standing there, staring forward, with his hands in his pockets. "You are here for the workout stuff?" I asked. He nodded, and I invited him inside and showed him to where the bench and weights were, then let him check out the stuff for himself. Except he didn't. He stood there and looked at it, but didn't do much else. I already knew after the emails that this guy was going to be quiet and probably shy or something, but something else was definitely off about this guy. We stood next to each other as I waited for him to say something or check out the bench. It was a really awkward minute, but then there was a knock at the front door. The guy's head whipped around and he looked at me with wide eyes, like he was gauging my reaction. Although my gut was telling me this was something horrible, I tried to play it cool. I started walking to the front door, and the guy followed close behind me. Right before I got to the hallway, he stopped me by grabbing my arm. I immediately pulled away and asked him what was going on, but he kept that same blank face and didn't say anything. There was another knock, and this time, the man instantly ran down the hallway and swung the door open, giving me enough time to turn around and run out the back door. I looked back and saw 3 more men entering my house. Luckily, they didn't chase me, and I was able to get to a neighbor's yard where I hid and called the police. While I waited, I saw movement in the windows of my house. It was unnerving to see that, especially knowing I could have been in there if I hadn't gotten out the back door. A whole 5 minutes passed before the movement stopped, and a couple minutes after that, the police showed up. To keep this from dragging on, the police didn't get much evidence from inside my house. The best they had was my description of the one man who I let in. The 4 intruders couldn't take much, at least, considering my house was mostly empty at this point in the moving process. What they would have done to me had I opened the door or stayed inside the house is unknown. I think it's unlikely that I would have gone unharmed, though. I've never opened Craigslist even once since then, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. I was using Craigslist to find myself some outdoor furniture. I had just moved and gotten a backyard patio, so I was excited to spend time out there, but didn't want to overspend on it. On the website, there were a ton of people selling outdoor stuff, but most of them were really outdated or just gross and overused. I took my time, casually checking throughout the week until someone posted one for sale that I liked the look of. It was a simple 2-chair and 1-table setup, but it looked clean and was a decent price. I sent an email and waited. It only took a couple minutes for the owner to respond. His name was Jared, and he explained that the set was newly opened but had a few scratches on it from shipping. After a quick back and forth, we agreed to meet the next day around 6 at his house. So come the next day, I drove over there. When I pulled up to the side of his house, the first thing I noticed was that all the lights were off inside. The only light that was on was the front porch light. The home itself, though, was actually really nice, looking like it was very expensive. I parked and got out, walking up to the front door and ringing the doorbell. I heard it ring from inside the house, but nothing followed it. No lights turned on and no footsteps coming to the door. I looked through the little window on the porch, not trying to be creepy, but just trying to see if there was anyone even home. I saw what looked like a normal house, but no signs of anyone. The sound of my phone receiving a text made me jump back from the window. It was Jared, saying to come around through the fence into the backyard. Everything was just a little off about this, but it was patio furniture, so I guess it made sense to me at the time. I walked around the front of the house and over to the wooden fence gate, pushing it open and walking into the backyard. Jared came around the corner and waved at me, then showed me over to the furniture. I was actually really stunned at how nice the setup was. Everything looked perfect and was high quality. I sat on one of the chairs and walked around it, looking for any damages because I just couldn't believe he was selling these. But after less than a minute of looking, Jared started to rush me. His smile faded and he showed an impatient face, followed by asking me if I would take it or not. I would have taken it without any trouble, but the change in attitude started to make me notice some other strange things. The most notable being that the set was perfectly placed, having other decorations around it and everything, as if it was meant to be there. Even the table had coasters on it for drinks. It just didn't look like it was even for sale. I think he saw my change in emotions because he started becoming pushy with me, trying to get me to give him the cash and take the furniture. Now uncomfortable with the situation, I took a step back and said I would think about it and text him my decision tomorrow. He frowned and took a step toward me, followed by another, and with every step closer he came, I could see it more clearly in his eyes that he had bad intentions. I turned around and ran back to the front of the house, hearing his footsteps following close behind until I reached the gate. I sprinted to my car, and strangely, the man turned out of the gate and ran across the yard until he reached an intersecting road. I watched him get in a car across the road and speed off as I sat in shock and called 911. As you probably know by now, that wasn't his house or his furniture to sell. The owners were on vacation, and the man, who still remains unidentified, was trying to sell their belongings while they were gone. Thankfully, there were no signs of him breaking into the home, but they still aren't sure how he knew the family was on vacation. All I can say is that I'm glad I made it out when I did, because I don't think I would have gotten away unharmed if I had tried to leave even just a moment later. I found a house on Craigslist that both me and my roommate were interested in renting. We didn't have a huge pool of money at the time, so taking up low rent offers on Craigslist was just about the best we could do right out of college. We sent in a quick request to tour the place and included both of our phone numbers as well. A few hours later, I got a call from the owner, Kim, who said he could have us tour the place tomorrow, but had other tours scheduled for the rest of the week. My roommate worked that day, but knowing he had other people lined up meant we had to see the place soon or risk losing it. So we both agreed that I would go see the house and just take pictures of it for my roommate to look at when he got off work. This wasn't ideal, but it was the best we could think of. When I got to the house on the following day, I was kind of disappointed at first glance. It was far from other houses, down a pretty beat-up road, and the house itself did not look well taken care of. The outside had overgrown bushes and grass all around it. I parked in the driveway and got out to get a better view, but there wasn't much else to see. I stood there in the driveway for a second, debating if I wanted to flake on the owner and pretend like I couldn't make it. It sounds wrong, but I could already tell this wasn't going to be the place for us. Just before getting back into my car, a man called out to me. He came out of the front door and greeted me, and now I knew I was too far in. Kim seemed really excited to show me the place, so I went along with it. We went in through the front, and again, at first glance, the inside was really disappointing. It was very old and even looked kind of run down. As we walked through the house, I noticed more and more things that just didn't look right. The entire place was so worn down, I couldn't see how this would possibly be livable. And I was positive these were not the pictures he had posted on Craigslist. I asked if he planned any repairs or anything, and he started running through a list of things he had planned. He basically named every part of the house, which made it obvious he was making impossible promises. After touring the whole first floor, he started walking me up to the second floor. When we got up to the hallway, all I could focus on was this one door in the far back that had a padlock on it. Then I looked down at the dusty hardwood floor and saw multiple shoe prints of different sizes, but all of them went to a single room, yet none of them were coming out of the room. Even if I was missing some shoe prints exiting, I still knew that if they were from people touring the house, they would have gone to all of the rooms, not just the one. This all came to thought within a few seconds of being upstairs, and my heart started beating faster as I got nervous. Kim walked down the hallway, passing by one of the rooms and going straight to the one where all the shoe prints led to. I stopped and stared at him as he opened the door and urged me to come look. He looked at me for a second, but then recognized my nervous face and said for me to come over, this time like he was demanding it. My adrenaline started pumping, getting me to break from the shock and run back down the stairs straight to my car. I pulled out and drove off as the man came chasing me down the driveway. I called 911 as soon as possible, but when they got there, the house was empty. Nobody was inside. However, the room with all the shoe prints leading to it had signs of recent activity, showing that there were at least 2 separate people being in there. And the room with the padlock had a ton of garbage, like food wrappers and old blankets. The house was abandoned 8 years ago, and these people seem to have been living there for a while. I don't know what their plan was to do to me, but it was most likely a setup for an ambush. What scares me is that they weren't trying to sell me anything that day, so there wouldn't be reason to believe I had a bunch of cash on me. And that makes me question what ambushing me would have been for. I use a lot of sites like Craigslist for the same reasons everyone else does. You can find expensive things for really discounted prices, or even just cheap things for even cheaper. I don't have a ton of money, and using these sites are sometimes essential when it comes to getting things like furniture that's usually really expensive to buy anywhere else. This happened when I was looking around for a dining room table. Ours was really old, and my whole family used it as a place to eat and as a workspace. So it's been through a lot over the years. I went around on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, but neither had anything good. Most of them were still expensive, and even when I tried to bargain with a few of the sellers, none of them would budge. So then I went to Craigslist. Around here, I think most people use other sites nowadays, but Craigslist still always had the cheapest deals, though they were still somewhat rare to find. But almost as soon as I opened up the site and hit enter on the search bar, a really good listing showed up. It was a very basic wooden dining table that didn't have much wear on it, and the seller posted it for only $100. Compared to the $400 to $500 everyone else was listing things for, this was a steal. I sent a message saying I'd love to check it out and would be willing to pay the full price. He didn't reply immediately, so I just took a break and hung out with my kids until around 7 when they went to their rooms to get ready for bed. I went back to my laptop and found a response from just a couple minutes ago. It was a very quick few sentences saying he was sorry but the table was going to be thrown out tomorrow morning. But if I really wanted it, I'd have to come by tonight or any time before 5 a.m. tomorrow. It was weird that he'd be willing to sell it at any time during the night, and his reasoning didn't make all that much sense to me. But after some thought, I replied back saying I could pick it up right now. I didn't want to go there really late into the night, or super early in the morning, but it was only 7, so I didn't see a problem if I was able to go right now. The man replied quickly, agreeing and sending the address. It was only 10 minutes from my place, so I let my wife know what was going on and where I'd be, then headed out. From context clues, you probably already know that I don't live in a lavish area. So when I say the seller's house was really worn down, I mean it was really worn down. It was small like the others in our area, but the yard was full of trash and random other things, surrounded by a thin chain-link fence. I parked on the side and opened the fence, walking through the yard and up to the door, which was already open. I could hear some people talking and laughing. I peeked inside and gave a light knock on the door. Right away, a man came around the corner and invited me in. He looked like he was in late college, somewhere in his mid-20s. As I stepped inside though, I couldn't help but notice how disgusting the whole place was. There were beer cans laying around and stains in the carpet. It looked like a really poorly taken care of house where they had probably hosted hundreds of college parties. The man was very laid back though, casually walking me down the hallway and into the kitchen while talking about how he didn't have room for the table anymore. When we got to the kitchen, there were 2 other men, looking about the same age and standing against the wall, seemingly in the middle of a conversation. Next to them was the table. Somehow it looked almost untouched. I didn't know how that was possible considering the rest of the house. I walked around it and checked to see if it was stable and whatnot. But as I did, the house suddenly went quiet. The 2 talking had stopped, and the man selling the table didn't speak either. I looked up, seeing them all staring at me. Did I do something? I asked, looking around at each of them. When my eyes fell on one of the men closest to me though, I noticed that his pupils were massive, something that only being drugged up could achieve, but what he was on I didn't know. Regardless, in that moment I knew this wasn't right. Not only was this getting strange, but I didn't want to buy a table that's been in this kind of house and used by these sorts of people. I think I'm gonna pass on it. Thank you though, I said softly. I started walking toward the hallway, but one of them stepped in front of me. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, blocking the way out. Something about the way they were all looking and acting. I could tell that whatever this was planned out, and they likely never meant to sell the table. My face fell to fear as the anticipation of just standing there, surrounded by these strangers, began to overwhelm me. But then one of them stepped over and whispered something in the other's ear, and they moved aside, still not saying anything. I cautiously walked between them, hurrying down the hallway and out the door. A lot of things went through my head on the drive home. I knew that they were planning something horrible, but what that was and why they ended up letting me go, I'm not so sure of. When I got home, I told my wife, who convinced me to call the police and report it, but they couldn't do anything without anything having happened. So whatever those men were planning, I'll probably never know. I just hope someone else doesn't have to find out. Before I get into this next story, I want to talk about an important sponsor for today's video. Aura is an advanced online digital security service, allowing you to scan and remove your personal data from various online sources, including scam centers, the dark web, and data brokers. These entities profit from your private information, making it crucial to eliminate your data from their reach. And Aura makes it as simple as possible for us to do this. With their free trial, I was registered in minutes and had Aura scan and remove my data with just a few clicks. They notified me about dozens of places all across the internet where they found my personal data, like my full name, phone number, and address. And without Aura, I never would have known. Afterwards, Aura continuously monitors my data, instantly notifying me of any issues that arise and enabling swift resolution. They also include a feature to encrypt your home's Wi-Fi, ensuring the security of all your connected devices. In today's world, personal identity and data theft are unfortunately widespread, affecting a significant number of US citizens, with millions falling victim each year, resulting in huge financial losses. With Aura, you can have the utmost confidence in your security and prevention measures. For a completely free 14-day trial, visit aura.com/whispered or scan the provided QR code. During this trial, you can discover if your personal data has been compromised, remove your data from multiple prominent platforms, and securely monitor your personal identity. I highly recommend using this free trial to see if your data has been stolen and to keep your identity secure. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this video and keeping our personal data secure. I was selling some of my shoes on Craigslist a year ago, just to pocket some extra cash. I wanted to move out of my old apartment in a few months and was hoping to get some money to help pay for movers. The shoes were nothing special, but I listed them for generous prices, hoping to get them bought quickly. I guess Craigslist wasn't the best place for shoes though, because it took a whole week before I got a single offer. It was some guy whose email had the name John K in it, and he offered just $5 less than my listing price. It seemed like an unnecessary adjustment to the original price, but I didn't want to keep waiting for more offers, so I wrote him back saying I was okay with that. We set up to meet the following day at 5 in the parking lot of a public gas station in the middle of town. The next day I sent a text and he confirmed that he was on his way, so I left as well and got to the gas station right at 5. They weren't there yet, but there was a lot of traffic on the roads, so I figured he'd be late. I sat in my car patiently, and over the course of 30 minutes, the roads cleared up and the sun started coming down, and then John finally pulled in. He drove a small sedan, with none of the headlights working, and resembling something from a scrapyard. He parked next to me and got out. John looked like he was in his 30s and was a pretty large guy, wearing ripped up clothes and having long, unkempt hair. He didn't say much, so I brought out the shoes and let him look at them. As he held them though and didn't say anything, he kept looking back at the gas station. I don't know what he was looking at, but after he checked over his shoulder multiple times, I glanced over as well. The gas station was empty aside from one guy putting gas in his car, but otherwise, I didn't know what he could be looking at. John was taking his time though, pointlessly looking over everything multiple times, as if there were some really rare shoes that he was going to drop hundreds on. But these were just some regular sneakers, nothing fancy or rare. Then John looked over his shoulder one more time, just as the car by the pump started to drive away. And all of a sudden, his whole demeanor changed. He stopped looking at the shoes and looked at me. "What else do you have?" I looked at him confused. "Those are the only shoes I brought. I didn't know you were interested in others." His eyes went cold as he stepped past me and put his hand on my car door, trying to open it. It was locked, and John immediately looked at me and told me to unlock it. His voice was deep and strict, like it was a threat if I didn't. I kinda just stared at him and tried to wrap my head around this, thinking of what the best course of action would be. But in the moment, there's just no time to really think through options. I unlocked the door, knowing at most all he could take was a couple random bills I had in the front. But then he said something that I was not expecting at all. "Get in." He opened the passenger door and told me again. I stood there, even more taken aback, but now starting to get way more worried about where this was going. I looked behind me, hoping someone else was here, but the gas station was empty. No people or cars anywhere in sight. John grabbed my arm and pulled me over to the door, taking the keys from me and aggressively shoving me into the car while throwing a few punches, landing on the right side of my face. I immediately tried to get up, but John slammed the door against my head, making my vision go blurry and everything just sort of fading in and out. I heard him start walking around the car as if he was going to the driver's side, but then he suddenly turned around and sprinted back to his truck. I was still out of it and barely remember anything else, but I guess someone pulled in at the perfect time and confronted John, scaring him away. If they hadn't have helped me, and John was able to get in and presumably drive away, I don't know what would have happened. Assuming his car was either stolen or untraceable to his name, then stealing my car and abducting me would have left no trace of our interaction, giving him days, if not weeks, to do whatever it was he planned, before anyone would even come looking. It was around this time last year when I decided to use Craigslist as a means to sell a few things I had to get rid of. My house was getting cluttered and I planned to get some new furniture. And with winter right around the corner, I wanted to get these things out fast. The main piece I was selling were these 2 lounge chairs in my living room. They were really big and a bit outdated, but still fully functional and didn't have any stains or rips on them. It only took about half a day for a few responses to come in, but 2 of the 3 gave me lowball offers, so there was really only one guy who was serious about buying them. He wanted to take a look at them after work that day, sometime around 6 or 6:30. I of course agreed, just happy to get them out quickly. Now usually I'd try to meet up somewhere public, but honestly I didn't have a way to transport the chairs, and even if I did, I don't think I could lift them myself anyway. So I sent him my address. Come 6 o'clock, I turned on the front porch light and opened up the curtains on the windows, then sat in the living room on my phone while I waited for them to show up. Probably 20 minutes passed before a truck pulled into my driveway. They took a few minutes before getting out and walking up to the door. I said hi and let him in. He was an average-looking man, late 20s or early 30s, wearing typical work clothes. His name was Matt, and he started up some small talk, telling me about why he was excited about getting the chairs and everything. The guy seemed really nice, and I felt relieved that this would be quick and easy. He walked around the chair and sat in it and seemed to enjoy it. We talked about price, and he was good to give me what I listed it for. But just as we were about to exchange cash, we both heard a car door slam shut. It sounded like he was right in the driveway, where he'd parked his truck. Matt quickly went outside to check on it, and I just watched, not really sure what was going on. I looked through the window, and there were no other cars out there, so someone had to have been messing with his truck. A minute later, Matt came in clearly angry and said someone stole a bunch of stuff out of his car, and I could tell that he was not so trusting of me, like he thought I had something to do with it. I obviously didn't, and I said that, But he was right to be skeptical, and I was also right to be skeptical of him. I still didn't know if this was some kind of setup, but before anything could be worked out, we heard footsteps quickly approaching the front door. We turned and looked over, seeing a guy in a hood push the door open and step inside my house. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked nothing short of insane. His right hand was shoved in his pocket with the outline of a very recognizable object. He stared at us, standing just a few feet away, looking like he was in a complete state of rage. The guy was young though, only a kid, maybe 18 or 19 years old, but still dangerous nonetheless. Both Matt and I stood still, trying to not provoke anything to happen, but then Matt started telling the kid to take it easy. He held his hands up and took a step closer, but the kid was quick to pull the weapon out of his pocket and aim it right at him. Yes, it could have been fake, but there was no way to tell, and from the way the kid was acting, I really don't think it was. He yelled at Matt to walk out the door, and now in shock, he did as he said. The kid then followed him out of the house and held him at gunpoint the whole way to the truck, where he had Matt get in the driver's seat, and then the kid got in the back. I watched in terror as he pulled out and drove away, obviously outside of Matt's will. As soon as they were gone, I called 911, then ran to my car and tried to follow them while describing what was going on to the operator. But they were gone. I couldn't find any sign of them. Police ran an investigation, using the information I had to quickly identify who Matt was and his truck's license plate. Over the next couple days, I was just waiting for a call, but that call never came. Both Matt and his truck still have never turned up. I feel guilty, like I should have done more, but everything was so risky, and I likely could have lost my life as well. And even in those final moments of the interaction, I didn't know for sure if Matt was in on it as some sort of elaborate plan. I don't know what that kid wanted, or why any of it happened. It's been almost a full year though, and I don't think it's likely that anything more will be known.